Okay, so welcome to part 3 of the Sean Connor story. I don't know what we're calling it.
Yeah, well, part 3 is season 1, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you haven't watched the first 2 parts yet, I'll leave the links down in the description. So the first part, obviously, it was your job to even actually get in the club and be recognised at all. And then in part 2, we found out that the two main quarterbacks that the actual team had went down, and then you managed to beat out the other 2 blokes ahead of you to win the starting job. So, okay, so that was probably the easy bit. Now you're actually the starting quarterback, in a very tough league, in the highest sort of level of league there is available in the UK. So how did that go? So you just want to talk us through what happened?
Well, year 1, without going into specifics of all the games, I mean, you play, it was different then. You would often play 12 games. You used to play them, but now it's 10 now. So we used to play a 12-game season. We knew we had 2 games up against the best team in the country as well. We'd been getting better each year under the coach. So each year the team had been getting better. There were high hopes before the season of the team reaching the playoffs for the first time in a few years. And we weren't renowned for making playoffs. But now with the injuries to the team and, some confidence issues and other issues as we entered the season, I don't think we were fancied to even have any kind of winning record. So for us that year, it was a question of what we could do. And a lot of people were expecting us to kind of maybe be a 3 or 4 win team, if I'm honest. That's what I kind of heard and thought about. But it didn't go down like that. And it didn't go down like that for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, within the first couple of games, we were 1-1. And if I remember both the games quite well, the first game I played very well, and a fumble by our running back in the very last play of the game cost us the game. And it's a game we should have won, really. So that added, there was good things and bad things from that game. The good things were that people gained a little bit of confidence in us as an individual. So I felt I gained the trust of some of the players that maybe I'd rubbed up the wrong way, particularly wide receivers who felt like, yeah, he really does deliver a good ball. My weaknesses were, I wasn't going to be putting the ball mega deep. I mean, I actually have not a bad arm. I can throw the ball about 30 to 40 yards relatively comfortably without overstraining. And when I really worked on it, I would honestly say I could throw the ball half the length of a football field with accuracy when I was back in, when I was at my best. The problem is once you go past a certain point, the ball will air on you and it's not very good. So I knew myself really 30 to 40 yards, good range. That's the top end range. It's a good spiral. I had a very good spiral on the ball, and when I'm in my zone, I'm really in the zone. And again, I can only illustrate this through simple things and things that you might see that are not connected with American football, but actually really illustrate the kind of person that I was when I played. Is simply that things like you've watched me do a basketball game, and it's like you'd be amazed. I go up against a Chinese boy and put 300 on one of these damn little machines because it requires routine practice, same technique over and over again, which is something that American football is all,
really, isn't it?
Yeah, American football is all based on it. Recognition, see, recognise, throw. The ability to see what's coming, adapt to the play, and some ad lib occasionally, some things that you have to do. So anyway, 2 games in, we're sort of 1-1, and that's okay. Second game, I played really well. It was my first game, and actually, what made it really good is the first game was more, the coach was more, I didn't get a lot of chance, more a run-based game, which is fair enough. Pitch was pretty boggy. Of course it would be. East Ham, our traditional home field. Being a quagmire was no surprise. But the second game, the coach said to me, I think I'm holding you back a bit because you keep telling me you think you could call you've got a good natural ear for calling the plays. I think I've seen your cadences in practice are very strong. What about the audibles? I said, I've got them all worked out. I've been working with the line since you let me into the team about, certain audibles we could call and how we would call them. And he said, look, if you can be my eyes and ears on the field, I think we could do well for the remaining 10 games. And I said to him, well, that's all I'm asking. That's all I want you to do is just give me that opportunity. If it doesn't work, after the first game of it not working, just, I'll just do it your way. And he said, that's the bit I like about you the most, Sean. You are listening to everything I'm telling you. You're picking it up and you're listening to the critique I give you and you're adapting and quickly changing anything I'm asking you to do. He said, but there is a thing where I found with you is there's certain bits of your game, I don't want to change it. So he said, I don't want to add anything to it because he said, I think that's you. That's who you are.
Yeah.
So we had a good accord very quickly. And by game 3, we went on a fantastic tear. I think we won the next 8 games. And we won them because people's confidence grew in the team. I took the capital, the first time that we have ever beaten the Ravens. And I, frankly, that was arguably a phenomenal game that day. But it was the fact that all the players that lost confidence early in camp all stood out like stars. And of course, Flypaper, being Flypaper, only made 1 catch. What a terrible 1 catch it was for 99 yards, and then was a record touchdown on a play that was ridiculous. I still don't know how he weaved his way to the end zone on that play. He acted as a decoy the entire game. Ravens really had done their homework, and they had spies everywhere, really, in my view. They knew the camps, they knew how quarterbacks worked, they knew about us. They tried every trick in the book to put pressure on me that game. They tried rushing everybody in one play. They tried a full-on blitz. They tried everything. They tried to play dirty. I'll be honest. There was some nasty stuff that went on in the English leagues back in the day.
What sort of thing?
But they were all doing it.
What sort of thing do you mean? What sort? When you say play?
Late hits. Trying to intimidate tactics. Certain words used at close range. I will not repeat on air.
Okay.
But you try all sorts of tactics that you do. There was one guy that I remember. I don't know who it was, but I remember the look in his eye. And funny enough, for the very final part of this, probably is worth it. This guy does come back, and he has one final say in my destination as a quarterback, because I didn't play long. I only played 2 seasons, but it scratched the itch I'd always looked for and achieved what I always wanted, and it was enough for me. And I'm really grateful for everything I got out of the game at that point. The only thing I regretted when I left it was I really should have gone into coaching earlier, if I'm honest. But I think I've reached a point in my life now where it means more when you coach people. I've helped out Northampton Knights, as you know, local team. It means more when you can help other teams. And, I'll still always scratch that itch later on in life. So we went on coming back to the story, went on a fantastic tear. There was lots of things that happened that were really great for me. 300-yard games that I was routinely putting together. But it was real dicing the defence, really dicing them to death. These aren't normally big plays, although there are a few very big plays. A nice, fantastic touchdown to interception ratio. But that season, 24 touchdowns to 3 interceptions sums up a lot about who I was as an individual, something that I felt very proud of, because I wasn't frightened of turning the ball over.
This is your first season in the league, you remember, as well.
But the great thing was when you got the confidence of somebody like Flypaper would routinely come away from a game with 9, 10, 11 catches. He was like Michael Thomas for me. And the other players would often come away with 6 to 8 each. So everybody was happy. Everybody was getting their share of catches. Running back was feeling confident and having really churning great yards over. And we went on a brilliant tear up of that season. And it's down to a lot of factors: trust, confidence, cadences, calls, trick plays. We really did very well. We reached the playoffs. We lost 1 game. I think it was second to last game. So we went 10-2.
You made the playoffs in the first year then?
Yeah, made the playoffs and went out in the first playoff game against the defending champions, which was the London Ravens. Ironically, again, we had to play them. And they were brilliant. I mean, they had changed their tactic for that game brilliantly. Their aim was simple. From the kickoff, we got to receive, and I don't think I saw the ball for almost the entire first half as a quarterback.
They kept you off the pitch.
Pretty much, because what they did in the first play was when they went to kick to us, I saw it immediately, and I said to the coach, "They're going onside here," and it wasn't a traditional onside kick. And he said, "There's nothing I can do to stop it." I said, "Time it out, coach," and it was too late, and the play went. And it was an onside kick. And it was a brilliant onside kick. It was brilliant. Had our team completely off balance. And then they deliberately, it's a masterclass actually of British football. Like, most teams will always look to, get what they can out of the play. If it's going to be a 50-yard run, it's a 50-yard run. If it's a 20-yard pass, 20-yard pass. Ravens deliberately, 3 plays, 10 yards for the entire game. You think about that. Even if they could break it for further yards, straight on the down marker every time to keep the clock running for the entire game. So they deliberately played 3 downs, 10 yards, and we were trying to stop them defensively. Now, occasionally we get the ball, but I had so few opportunities in the first half, and they were brilliant. Their defense was brilliant. They played a great game. And no matter what we tried, it was a baptism for me, that game. I learned a lot. They had our number. They knew our plays. They absolutely marked Fly Paper out of the game, and they did that in a brilliant way, because what they did with him is they put a man on him, and as soon as the play was called, they took him out of the game. If it meant giving up a penalty, they took him to the floor. So they really had worked out a script to make it difficult for us in that game, and they walked away with that as a comfortable victory. I think if memory serves me right, 24-3 was all it was. Arguably my worst game. But it wasn't really, because I learned so much from it. And it was information that stayed in here that I thought, I got you now. I know what you're doing. That's great. Well done. But next year, you're not going to win one game against us. And that was in my mind the moment this season finished. My coach and a lot of the players that year were very disappointed, because we'd gone so far, we'd looked so good.
You were on a roll.
Flattered to deceive. Yeah. We flattered to deceive when we reached the playoffs. And many people would argue, rightly, that the quarterback really makes his bread and butter in the playoffs. But in that playoff game, we were up against the very best team the country had seen ever, frankly. In 10 years, they've been fantastic. And every year they did the same things. They were able to beat up.
I imagine they attracted the best players and,
best players, best, had the best.
How many Americans did they bring over, do you think?
They had lots of good players, but I'm not taking off. They were a good team. There's no two ways about it. That's who you got beat. That's who you got beat. But we came out that year. There was a lot of people very disappointed, and I didn't. And the coach said to me, "I mean, brilliant again from Bubba at the end of the year. You got to imagine he's had highs and lows here. You've taken a guy's fifth string. I mean, that's the story. Fifth string to starter to playoffs in that one season, and for all of that." That's amazing as a coach. I think that speaks a lot about him, and for him to have the trust to allow someone to come in, virtually, nobody off the street kind of thing, to come in and actually do this with him, brilliant.
So you started the year on the sidelines, on the pitch, not even getting on, and then you finished it, with a playoff appearance, which was a meteoric,
which is
good.
Really. But he was then more worried about my mindset. So he was more about, how do you feel at the end of the season? And I was quite buoyant about it. I said, well, I think we got them. We've come out of the game, and I went, I think we got these guys next year. I think I've got it.
And was that more? Did you definitely have a sort of strategy in your head, or did you just?
Yeah, well, as the game was unfolding,
I'm going to get these.
As I was watching what they're doing, I just felt that they had shown us their whole hand of the way they operate at the highest level. And I actually felt quite privileged. I thought, it felt like to me, and it may sound really stupid looking back, this is an honest thing. I mean, I haven't really talked about these emotions for a long time. So for me, it was like, as silly as it sounds, you've got a team. I mean, you imagine the scene. I walk into the dressing room after the game. I'm the last person off the field, by the way. I've congratulated the whole of the Ravens team. I've made a point of congratulating their coaching staff, their back office people, and anybody associated with the team. Well played. That was a brilliant performance. While the rest of my team went off very dejected. And when I went into the locker room at the end, there were people's heads were all low. And I just said to them, I don't think you understand what we've just achieved. I said, we have seen the Ravens at their absolute best, and they needed to be on their best to shut us completely down today. I said, we've just gone 10-2 and made the playoffs for the first time ever. And you've done all that with a beanpole. And I said, I want to tell you something. I said, look, next year, I promise you, I guarantee you, guarantee you this, 100%. I said, next year, we got a chance to go undefeated. And not only that, even if we don't quite go undefeated, we will make the final next year, because I know how we can beat these guys. And I said, there's nothing they've done today that they can repeat next time that we cannot counter. I said, it's seen it all. And I had people going, but look at the way they played that onside kick. Look at the way that they went for the first down. I said, listen, they were banging our heads again. They were trying to tell us that they were going to take their time. If you look at it logically, guys, how many plays did they really run? They just kept ramming the ball down our throat and wasting the clock, because they're frightened of you. And the moment you realise that they're frightened of you, the moment you realise you can have them. But when we start the next game, I promise you, the first time we play them in the season, we have to batter them. And if we batter them in that first game, we'll beat them wherever we play them the rest of that year. We're going to beat them. And that's exactly what happened. And we went on to the second season with that kind of momentum.
Okay, so
I never stopped believing.
How did the sort of pre-season, second season, I mean, did the two quarterbacks that were initially ahead of you, did they ever come back into the picture? What happened there?
Yeah, Tony came back in the second season, but he was a shadow of the player that had been there before. His leg wasn't right, and although he felt,
Probably
yeah, he
ACL
could probably,
operations back then weren't as good as they
well, they're
are.
not good. And although he felt like the coach said, he said, if you want to, come back in, Tony, we'll always bow to the veteran, which I thought was pretty bad, because here I am super confident. You got to imagine, out of the game, like I went home and I was probably the only person not dejected. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but
Yeah, so to
honestly,
hear somebody say they might usurp you and put the veteran back in,
yeah,
it's great to hear.
I was super confident. I came out of the season. I was kept in touch with all the players. I made a point of phoning everybody and keeping them up to. And out of season, we did a lot of workouts together that year as well. I said, look, let's all work together. Let's do extra training. Let's do extra stuff. I got all the receivers together. I did a lot of stuff outside the game, and I know that when the coach started hearing about this, he was like, I've never had a quarterback do that for me before. And I said, well, look, I am desperate to prove it. And then when we get to training camp again, and it's like, Tony's back, and it's like, look at Tony. I'm thinking, what about me? Look what I've done in this season. I mean, what have I, look what I've done. It's not chopped liver, I mean, it's a lot going on. But then Tony did the great thing, which is what you've got to do in life, something I've learned massively, and it certainly stayed with me all my life, is there comes a point every time where you just have to hand the baton on. And I never forget that. When he said in the scrimmage, he said, listen, I watched every game last year with you guys, and he said, Sean's confidence hasn't left him. And he said, I can't give that confidence. I don't feel I could do what he's doing. He said, I might have a better arm. And he looked at me with a smile. He said, I've got a better arm.
He made sure you knew that.
And then I said, well, yeah, you might have a better arm. And he said, yeah, but he said, I haven't got that. He said, you've got to have that. He said, there's an X factor in there. He said, there's a belief. It's not just blind belief. He said, look, when he says he's going to do something, he goes and does it. And if he's telling you you can go nearly undefeated and you can beat these guys, then you bet your bottom dollar he can tell you you're going to do it. And he said, I've heard you've been working a lot in the off-season. So he said, it only leaves me one thing to do. Wish you all the best for the season, and I'll be watching from the sidelines.
Did he actually stay on as backup as well?
Yep, stayed on as backup to help in case anything went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really admirable guy there, isn't it? That's done all
and
that.
Once you've got the backing of the first-string quarterback to support you, you've got the coach who's now, he's put himself out there a bit, because you've almost gone and handed the bat back to the original starter. Yeah. You've almost given it back. So you've given me a knock.
And did you ever talk to him about that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I mean, after the scrimmage that day, I remember the coach coming to we spent a lot of time after scrimmages. A lot of time he talked to me about different things, not always about football, but I think that was his way of seeing where your mind was. And there was a brilliant thing where he said, look, I had to do that, don't you? And I said, yeah. I said, you had to do it because you had to do it for Tony. And he said, so you do get it? And I said, yeah, I totally get it. I said, of course I would have been gutted if Tony had said, yeah, I'm taking it back. I'd have really been gutted, because I would have been waiting for my opportunity.
Many people would take it, whether they deserved it or not, if they're offered.
Yeah, well, it was different. And Tony never lost sight of it, because he knew he wasn't right. And he said himself, if he'd gone back and played and got another injury to that leg, he probably never would have walked properly again. So it was the right call. So, yeah, I felt, personally speaking, that when we went into that second season, I was in a brilliant mindset, particularly after the first scrimmage, where I now had officially fully got the keys to the car. I just felt like it was my offense. And I felt like with a few tweaks and a few different changes that we weren't allowed to do in the first year, we could take the Ravens. And most of it was down to what I called the injury trick play. If we showed them part of a game, if we saved a lot of our best stuff for them, and we put plays in specifically around them and caught them on the back foot, we could ram the ball down their throats, but we were going to do it our way.
So how did the season start then? So you're starter then. How did you get on? What sort of week did you play them, and were you undefeated before you?
Yeah, it was about week 3. We played them the first time in the season. And
did you win the first 2 games?
Yeah, won the first 2 games. We're going in hot to play them, and we put up some big scores. If memory serves me right, we went on and played one team which we smashed 59-0 in the first game, and that was we had to stop running the score up by the second half. It was quite an amazing game. I think it was Kent Seminoles that we played that game. Yeah, pretty certain it was. Brilliant game. Absolutely blew them out of the water. Eventually, actually, ironically enough, it was the Kent Seminoles from our own division who were on the opposite side of the table, who we eventually played in the final.
Well, don't talk about that. No spoilers yet, Sean.
Okay, but we smashed into pieces in the first two. We had two very, very strong games. We played the Ravens in the third game, and I would argue that with anybody that if you saw the way that we came out of that game, the confidence that the team had going in, and this unnerving trust in each other, and they started as they often did. The Ravens, they started with scoring first. You know, they scored first on a long run, and I could see a couple of boys' heads dip. First play from scrimmage, bang, touchdown Ravens. And this is very reminiscent of Brady, I think. I went over to the defense and I said to the defense, listen here. I said, listen, guys, I'm going to put on a clinic today. And I said, if you're going to let us down and lose this one for us, I said, you've got to answer to all these lads here who've been working in the off-season. Why, you fat load, you fat arse load, you've been doing nothing in the off-season, right? We've been working out extra here. I said, to give us this opportunity, that was a busted play. I had a couple of people, big lads, you know, stand up there. And I said, listen, it's the busted play. And I said, they're watching us from the opposite sideline. So what you need to do now, and I remember this guy, this is the funniest thing, John Thomas, one of the funniest guys, massive, like a haystack of a guy. He was looking at me with anger, the veins on the side of his neck popping up, saying, as I'm calling him out the busted play. And he says, I said to him, they're watching from the sideline here, John. I said, so if you lose your cool here, they are going to know you've lost it. So I said, what you need to do is shake my hand. And he looked me in the eye and he shook my hand and he said, shout it out, you're right, Sean, they'll never do that again. No, it was brilliant from that moment on. Our defence never let another point in for the entire game, and the offence went on the kind of run that you can only dream of. The kind of everything clicked, every play worked, every screen pass worked, every run was perfect. We got every yard out of every single play. And we also, on a couple of occasions, done them with street yard football. No call, no scrimmage we went in the scrimmage, and we normally scrimmages, you can hear things. You know, as a defence, you're trying to listen in. You know, you're trying to hear what's going on. And for that scrimmage, on a few of those, no words, nothing. And I just looked at players and we nodded at each other, and there was like confusion amongst them, as if what is going on? It's like telepathic stuff now. So I wouldn't even call plays. I didn't even call in the huddle. I didn't go hut, 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 nothing. I just stood there and the ball would get snapped. So we had our own silent counts. Imagine that from a defense, never having encountered it before. It's the kind of stuff you can only dream of. And also it's where I put in the first time I think it was ever done in the UK, the Statue of Liberty play. I'd seen it played in the college games, really desperate to try it out against the Ravens, where the quarterback has the ball at the highest point, drops it behind his back, controls it with his offhand behind his back, and then walks off, brings it back round, and then throws the ball down the sideline. Great moment in a game.
So you put all these sort of trick plays, or use all the trickery you got inside their head with a silent count.
Silent counts, snap counts. They had no idea how we were running plays. They didn't know how the audibles were being called because there was no apparent audible. We literally were playing street yard football on them. And
not only did you win like the actual game, you won the mind games with them as well.
We won the mind game
the year before.
Every time we played them that season, we done them.
Okay, so what was the final score in that game?
Against them, the first time we played them, 21-0. First time they'd ever been shut out.
Well, they scored first, so it must have been 21-7.
Sorry, 21-7. But it was the first time, first time they'd ever been, it's the second game we shut them out. It's the first time they'd ever been kept under 10 points in any game.
Okay, so how did you get on this? So we've got to week 3, you're 3-0. When do you play them next?
I think it was like the third to last game of the season is the way the actual schedule went that year.
Week 10 or something.
Round about that time.
What was the record of week 10 when you played them the second time?
We were undefeated.
So you were 10-0 going with high confidence. So did they change anything in
Yeah, they tried a couple of changes, but we flatlined, outdid them. In that game, again, it was another shutout. It was a similar scoreline, but it was 24-0 in the second game. What made this significant? It was the first time that they'd been beaten back-to-back games by one team ever, you know, in that regard. I mean, it did happen afterwards, and, you know, they did, you know, slowly fell apart a few years later, but they were still a great team for 5-6 years after that. But it was the first significant double defeat they'd had in the season. It did impact their playoff chances, although, you know, we did meet them one more time and did beat them in the playoffs. So,
okay, so what was your final record then? Did you finish 12-0?
No, we lost one game, and it was a disappointing game. I'd actually had in the Ravens game. This is the bit I think I told you about, where in the Ravens game, I took a double hit in the Ravens game where I'd been pancaked from two different directions, had the wind taken right out of me. So in the final game of the season, even though we could have gone undefeated, the coach rested us, and they put the third string guy in who was only there for chicks. And he had quite a few come to watch him, but it was a terrible game. Actually, it was we lost a bit of confidence there. But I think the coach did it to rest the starters. I think it was probably the right call. We don't need a 12-0 record. What we needed was the playoff wins. That's what we needed more than anything else. I was grateful for it because, if I'm honest, I needed the week to recover from the hit. Even though I pretended I was okay.
Well, your job's done, really, isn't it? You've won all your games. You've qualified.
We went into the
playoffs. Who did you play in the first round of the playoffs?
There's 3 playoff games. Can't remember the first game particularly well. I'd have to go back into memory banks and look in old photos, to be honest with you. But the second game was against the Ravens, which we won. Then the final was against Cairns Seminoles.
So talk us through the Ravens then, because this Ravens game was quite a ding-dong affair from what you've told me in the past. So, basically, it was pretty tight until the end, wasn't it? You were behind, weren't you, until the final drive?
Yeah, that's right. We're basically playing for a final slot. So, the game is as tight as you can imagine. I mean, they've adapted to what we've been doing to them that season. They don't want to be beaten 3 times in a year. They're throwing everything at us in the kitchen sink. I think they had a couple of very, very decent American players who come into their squad mid-season.
Oh, really?
Excellent.
Oh, really?
They had a couple of very good guys. They had a running back from Alabama State who was unbelievable. I don't know what grade he would have been, but there was a play, and it's a true play. One of the funniest things documented, I think, in a British newspaper, and there's always things in First Down. He ran a play. I saw this guy a few years later, and I think I might have mentioned bits of it where he ran a play, this kid, and he went through 2 tackles because he had to break the initial tackle and then break a second one before he got out in the open. And he went, it's good 30 yards for a score. But these 2 players he took down in our team, he busted them both up. Both hits, both people he hit went down. They were both out. So we had like the casualty list building up on the sideline. It was a real bloodbath of the game. They were just so good. They were really, really good. But we were in it. We had this mindset of, ding dong. It was a ding dong affair. They scored, we scored. They scored, we scored. And it was 28-21. And we were we're obviously a score behind, and we've got 2 minutes left. I've got the ball, and I want to score quick because I want to win the game. So I want to score, and then I want us to have another chance. I didn't care about the clock. The coach was the same. He said to me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Let's score quickly, and let's do to them what they did to us. Let's go for the onside kick." And he went, "What, in a playoff game?" Yeah. So he said, "What, you believe you're going to score quick, and you're going to get the ball back, and you're going to win the onside kick?" He said, "You know what mathematically that tells you?" I said, "We're not playing mathematics here, coach. We're playing to win." And he said, "Okay, how quickly can you score?" I looked over at our dear friend Flypaper. Now, Flypaper by this stage, 2 years now. So 2 years leading the league in yards. It's unbelievable. I mean, just look at it like Julio Jones-like leagues. It touches, catches, yards. I mean, it's incredible in the UK game. I mean, it really is when you're putting up these kind of numbers.
And was he English guy? Was he English?
Yeah, Adrian. Oh, yeah. Just amazing guy. Just the great, just never dropped any. I can't remember a drop. I mean, that's all I can say in 2 years of playing with him. I don't remember a drop. It didn't matter how difficult the ball, out of the edge it was, end zone, behind him. And when you look at players today, when people see Odell Beckham going up, catching the ball like that, this is a guy who could catch a ball between his legs. I mean, he was catching balls, ridiculous balls, that you just thought, how's he got it? Anyway, so
you got 2 minutes left. You're down 7 points.
We're down 7 points. We've got 2 minutes left on the clock, and I've just given him a look, and he knew immediately, I want you to run the injury drill. I want you to get it ready. So he sets his corner up. He goes down, clutching his leg, and he literally plays it beautifully. He runs the defender off, then falls to the ground, clutching his hamstrings, rolling in agony, absolute writhing in agony, and then running to the coach to go off. So going up, I've got to come off, and the coach saying, get back in. We haven't got time to get you off. So he's looking at me, I'm looking at him and said, just do your best, knowing that what he's going to do is actually pretend to go down, and then get straight back up. So he got straight back up after falling over. His defenders come off as if he's going to come in for a corner blitz on me, and now I've got an open receiver out in the flat. So all I've got to do is hit him. I threw a perfect pass in stride, and you should have seen him go, Adrian. I mean, it looked fast. He didn't normally look quick, but he looked so grace. I mean, and it was this kind of peacock. That's all I'm going to describe him as. He was caught in the silhouette of the sun, running down the sideline, and he honestly was like that. And he looked like a bloody prancing peacock heading for the end zone. And the way he went up to these bigger players and just said, "And that, my friends, is number 21 of the year." Boom! And it was it was amazing. So
you've tied it up.
Now we're tied, and we've got to rely on as well. We've got to rely on a kicker as well. So I mean, this was never a good thing in the British game. I've got to say, extra points and field goals in the British game were dicey affairs. Yeah. We had quite a good one. Ironically enough, Blaine was a good kicker and not a bad guy anywhere inside the 30. I mean, we're talking British games, so 30 was pretty good. But outside the 30. All bets are off. But he put extra point, no problem. Put that through, as always, straight down the middle, very technique. And there was talk about going for 2, but to me, that wasn't the right way to go for it. So we decided we put, a normal lineup for kicking the ball deep to them. And instead of that, we put, the only substitute change we put out there was Flypaper, and his job was to go and get it. So, and I thought that was a brilliant choice of the coach. Get me the ball. And the kicker put a ball probably wrongly 15 yards further than it should have gone, but it was inbound and it was bouncing like an egg, rolling. Yeah. And old Flypaper dives into a scrummage, and you're thinking, well, there's no way. Anybody that doubted him, you'd think, again, no way can he come out of that, because they've got players on the ball and there's all sorts going on. And in scrimmages, you never know. You don't know what's going on under those scrimmages.
Yeah, there's lots of
so it's not very pleasant. Anyway, so he's gone under a pile. He's in a pile of people, and people are slowly being pulled off, and eventually we get to him, and he's just holding the ball. He's just waving it around, he's like, "I got it, it's no problem." And then the coach is saying, "We've got about a minute left. What do you reckon we should do from this position?" And I just said, "We drive down the field, and we let the running back take this one in for us to get us to the final. We let him take it in because he needs this." So that's what we did. We took the ball down the field. It was steady plays, using the clock up, but beautiful as well. Again, Flypaper at his graceful best. Every time he needed to save the clock, I could put it 2 yards out of bounds, and the guy would somehow come in, both feet in badge. You could never argue it. Never argue it as another thing in the British game. Often was the case of calls would be iffy at times. I mean, it happened both ways.
Calls are iffy in the NFL at times.
But the way that he would put his feet down, both feet, you didn't have to have both feet down in those days, but you'd have both feet down, in bounds, leaning. I mean, like it's Michael Jackson leaning out of bounds with the hands on the ball. And then as he's falling, he's still got his feet, and he's literally telling the refs, look at my feet, look at my feet. So good. So with that kind of confidence, you just, that's all you can really say. It was just brilliant. And again, it was literally the last stroke of the game to run the ball in. So again, that took confidence to win the game. So then you go through to the final against the Kent Seminoles, a good team who we had beaten previously in the year, smashed them in the first game, but got better as the season went on. But what a final, Al. I mean, really, it's about as best as a final can be, if I'm honest. For me, it ends in 2 ways. The score and the final play for me probably are the moments that I remember the greatest. Simply the way the game started and the way we played. As a team, I don't think you could be any proud of all your players.
I thought you told the first play was kind of amazing as well, wasn't it, from what you told me?
What do you recall of what I've told you?
That you threw it blind almost, because knowing he was going to be there, and just to set the tone.
Yeah, well, it's like a classic situation of you got the sun in your eyes. It's the first play of the game. You got a field. We were playing over in a stadium near Wembley. Wish it was Wembley Stadium, but it was a lovely stadium, closed unit, one of those kind of like track and field kind of places.
Yeah.
And the sun was just peeking over the top of this in one of the very first plays. And I said to Adrian, I said, look, I'm going to be putting a ball up I've got no idea. I can't see that side of the field. So you're gonna have to adapt to it. You're gonna have to fight it. You have to go and get it for me. And he said, just don't worry. He said, just put it out there. Tell me how far out. I said, 30 yards out, right over the middle. I said, that's all I'm going to tell you. 30 yards from this position, just get there. And I put a ball over. I couldn't see it. I had players in my face. And all I remember is on my back, listening to people, because that's all I could recall. And I could hear people, the cheer just went up. And as I came up from the floor, and I could see, it's pretty much one of the very first plays of the game, and I could see him peacocking into the end zone and celebrating, this like of which I hadn't seen him do before. He did a backflip and God knows what else he did. It was so funny to watch. And again, he said,
well, this is a Brit Bowl final, so this is
as
good as it gets.
It was quite funny. And I remember being helped up by the two opponent linemen who both helped me up off the ground and said, that was one hell of a throw under the pressure we put you under. He said, how the hell did you know your receiver was going to be there? And I sort of thought, well, I didn't. It's like one of those things you just have to hope. But it was just a great final. I mean, everything went right for us again. We had a perfect game plan. The coach must have been super proud because everything we drew up and everything we thought about worked. And we rolled it. I mean, we absolutely rolled it. I mean, we ended up winning 36, I think was the end score. So 3 field goals. Yeah, something along the lines of 36 or something on that range to 6. And they missed an extra point. So it was a clear, we won it almost from the first quarter. We never looked back. And we were able to roll and roll and roll. And when you've got that momentum, particularly when you know in the second half of the game, the game's yours and you know it's a final, I don't think there's any greater feeling than you're able to do things with other players that haven't necessarily had the chance. You know, here's one for you and your time for a run here.
Giving everyone a piece of it.
Then there came the moment that really sticks out, Al, in my mind. It's the moment that defines why it finished for me. It wasn't about reaching the final, and it's the defining moment. And it's probably why I look back on the Tony moment. We were in our final. We knew it was going to be our final drive ever. I didn't know it was going to be my final drive ever, but I was kind of happy where I was. You know, it's kind of one of those things. I felt really good. And we're in a final drive, and during the final drive, I got knocked over. It happens a lot in any game. I got knocked down, and one of the linemen saw that I was down on the ground. The game was won. It was over, really. And my hand was down, and I was going to get up, and he just stamped on my wrist and broke it. That's how I broke my wrist, my right hand. And I knew I busted the bone in my hand straight away. No, it was one of the opponents.
So they did it on purpose?
Yeah, did it on purpose, broke my wrist. And I knew I was in a lot of problems now at this point. I knew there was something. I knew something wasn't right with my hand. And the coach said, because they didn't call it, didn't get called or anything. And the coach said, "Do you want to come out?" And I said, "Coach, this is likely to be my very final ever play." And he looked at me in the eyes. And he said, "But you've done so much." And I said, "But I know it's as far as I'll ever go." And he said, "But you're never going to play again?" And I said, "I'll be honest with you. I was lucky to have played these 2 years. And if you look at the players coming into the league," and I just looked around at some of the Kent Seminoles and a couple of players that were coming in. I said, "Look, there's going to be even more Americans coming in. They're better than us. They're bigger than us. And let's be honest, I'm going to get buried on a depth chart. I'd like to go out this way. Yeah, this is how I want to go out. This is the moment." He said, "But you don't have to, you could just hand this ball off." I said, "Look, my wrist was pretty much stuck in that position. I broke the smallest bone in my wrist, but basically my hand was actually stuck in that position." I said, "I can still throw one last pass. I want it to be a good one, and I want it to be to flypaper." And he said, "Do it." So I put one last final ball in, and I put the best ball. I would argue it's my finest ball. It's the perfect ball. It's the perfect ball in stride. It broke 2 defenders. It was so perfectly placed, breaking 20 yards, that the only thing that Adrian had to do was peacock into the end zone. And that was the final throw ever made in my 2 years within the NFL. Well, not NFL, but within the Brit Bowl scene. So it was lovely to have done it. It was lovely to have reached that point. And then it left me at the end of the game with mixed emotions in some ways. Good, because we'd achieved what we'd achieved, and I felt very proud of it. I heard some really great things from the opponents all through that season. I heard a couple of American coaches who said, "Who is this UK guy?" And I had a lot of people talk to us, but I just felt that it was the right thing to do at the right time. Plus, my life was changing. My life was changing as well. I mean, by this stage, I was 21, and you're starting to, I'm starting to find girls, let alone chick magnet. We're all starting to meet people now. And so, I knew my life was changing. I knew that they were getting bigger. And I knew that I wasn't going to be the kind of person that was going to be buried on a depth chart. I'd done what I wanted to set out to achieve. I'd achieved more than anybody would have ever dreamt. So it left me in a good position to walk away. But it was quite a weird thing because I go into a locker room and everybody's celebrating. And I celebrate with them. And then people are talking about the next year. And I didn't want to tell them. So I didn't want to tell them that I wasn't coming back. I didn't tell them. So it was quite a really weird feeling to leave and not say anything. And you've got to remember, this is an advent before kind of computers really took over and, you had to phone everybody and kind of thing. And then the next season came round and the only thing I did was exactly what Tony had taught me really during that year, the original first string quarterback, which was to go back to training camp, see who the main guy was that year, and it happened to be an American. They brought in a semi-professional American player, and wish him well for the season. They literally handed the baton over and say, "I'll be watching from the sidelines and wishing you all guys well." And that it was the right call because the sizes got bigger, people got more professional, the league has begun to change, and the London Capitals were never the same again. We had 2 great years. I was lucky to be part of it, and that was our finest moment, our finest hour, really. So it was lovely to have done what we set out to achieve and do. And it might seem to many that it's a very short window, but from it, a lot of life lessons came and a lot of lessons about myself. I learned a lot of things about not being limited by your apparent barriers and how you can use your negatives to your strengths and what skills you can bring into something if you're determined enough to want to succeed in it. And I think ultimately it's led to 2 things, really. The first thing is my love affair of the game has never dwindled. So fantasy football was obviously a route that we were eventually going to work our way into. And then finding somebody like yourself with the same kind of passion and enthusiasm has inspired us further to want to take more steps into that, coupled with the coaching element, which again, I would never have thought I would have ever had the opportunity. And I'm very grateful for them to coach. No, I've coached, individuals quarterback wise, which is lovely, but to have the opportunity to help develop a young team to get them ready to play, it really felt really good to have helped them along the way. And so I feel very honoured to have done that. And it's not often in your life you can say that you've actually coached as well. That's also quite unique. And no matter what level, it still feels pretty good because in this country, American football isn't our first game. So again, to get players to a point where they can compete is a privilege and an honour. And if it's helped to people in any way, great. And I still believe at some point in the future, I'm still going to coach again. And I think that that's definitely going to happen at some point. I'm going to take a team on and we're going to take them up to the first division again. And I believe I'm going to be part of something there as well again. I still don't think that opportunity has left yet.
Or maybe there'll be a part 4 at some point then. The part 4.
Yeah, there's always going to be an opportunity. It can be old as you like as coaching. Ultimately, it helps. So, that's the route I think in the end I'll probably end up going down. But for the moment, my love affair of fantasy football has never left us, and my love of the game has never dwindled. I admire the players so much for what they achieve because I know how hard it is just even to get to the starting line every season. And I know what it's like to play injured as well as, I know it's hard. Sometimes when we talk about fantasy, of course, we think, we talk about players letting us down and, week-to-week injuries. And, we know that. But in truthfulness, we also understand the cost that this game has on people.
Yeah,
and
it's a very
I think it's apt and wise to end it on in this way, really, which is just to say, I know from a small experience, because somebody asked me this question actually as a question away from the YouTube comments, which was about, you mentioned, I remember you talking about concussions before, and they do have an impact. And I think it's true to say players who've played at any level of sport, the concussions are definitely part of it, and they get harder to overcome. So you have to really weigh up. There's another reason to believe in the game. I had received at least 1 concussion during the game, possibly 2. And they do get progressively harder to overcome. So you have to weigh all these factors up whenever you play sport at any level. And the level we were playing at in the kindest possible way, although it was, for Britain, it's a good level. If we're honest, back in that era, it's okay. And it sounds more powerful than it really is. What they're playing today, the kids that are out there now playing, even in the second division, the first division, everything else, their standard is so superior, honestly,
Yeah.
than anything we were
Well,
used
things
to. I would
evolve
say
over
our
time,
standard
don't they? So.
is massively evolved, and a lot of the football back in my era, there was a little bit of thuggery. You know, it was a bit more brutal, barbaric stuff, but that also means it was actually harder to thrive in. So, yeah, probably the best way to leave it there. But it was a real privilege. Thank you for at least allowing me to go down memory lane. It's not something I like to talk about because I believe those are memories are best kept in the past. And it's quite interesting when I talk to people from that era, particularly like Adrian and people like that, how we're all so similar, you know, how it's just something that happened. And I kind of think that's quite a great way of thinking about it. Don't worry too much about what others think. You did it, that's great, but it was only a part of your life. It's what came after that's more important. Football is great, but there are many more other things that have proved their weight in gold as a life journey. But I'd highly recommend it. If you ever want to cut your teeth, try it. Go and join an American football team. Find out if it's for you. Realise how tough it is, and but try and stick at it. If anything, this sort of small video series has taught you is you can still be yourself. You need to listen, adapt, but at the same time, you've got to be your own person when you play. And if you persevere at it, it's the most rewarding experience as a sport because it is the total team game. And some of the things that come afterwards, and some of the times of success, highs and lows, are some of the funniest times I've ever had in any kind of environment when it comes to sport, and will always stand with me. Some of the things that people did, the hilarity of the things that went on during the game, the way people behaved, it will leave you wishing you'd done it, but also hopefully having done it, wanting a bit more. No harm in it, but you've got to know also one final thing, when to walk away. It's a skill in itself. And I always say that to people. You often see some people in this game over here at the moment who've played 1 or 2 years beyond what they should have done because they think they're letting people down. And I think that's wrong. You're hurting yourself longer term. You're better off, once you've made that decision, no matter how hard it is, stick at it. That's it. Draw a line under it, move on. There's always coaching. There's more other opportunities where you can impact people. And you don't know where those life skills are going to be valuable. Who would have known that all this journey would have taken us to a point now where we're working with special needs children and impacting their lives. And I'm absolutely certain a lot of the lessons I learned about perseverance, you can't argue with it, no matter what your disability, because you know, I'm a 6'1" beanpole with dyslexia who has trouble putting grammar together. So I know you've got problems, but we can get you there. And that's what life's all about.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed listening to the story again, Sean. Hopefully you have as well. If you've enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up. Comment down below. See if you've enjoyed it or any questions for Sean. Maybe we'll do a follow-up.
If you are a player, if you're a football player over in this country looking for some additional coaching, I don't charge anything. This is a thing. Don't feel you can't reach out. If you can make the journey up into the Northampton region, we'll always meet with you. And come and help you develop you as an individual till you feel comfortable, and then you can rejoin your team if it's just an extra couple of sessions. It can all help.
Okay, so subscribe if you want to hear more. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, and we appreciate you watching. Thanks very much.